Good morning, everybody. And you'll still be you. Everybody out there, thank you for coming and visiting us. Yes, you, and you. So, for you to bear things to go through if you're going anywhere. Yeah, so, my wife and I, we had a radio show. Actually, it was more of my wife's deal, and but I was on it too. And in any event, she would have a very detailed list. Again, good morning. Thanks for tuning in. I was thinking about what we should talk about. My wife's radio show, she would always have a detailed list of everything. She was very organized, my wife. You wouldn't believe it. But she would have one session called Trending Topics, and because of my wife's accents, it comes out a little bit like training topics. So I was thinking of what I wanted to talk to you about today. Had a long drive down the coast. It was beautiful. Then I got to, was messing around with printed circuit boards a little bit, and looking at more stuff about making your own drones. Something I encourage all of you to do. It's not that difficult. If you have a 3D printer, you can print every single component of it, with the exception of the electrical motors, of course, and the lens. You're going to need a printed circuit board, but there's software online that you can use to program that's already available from GitHub. Get yourself a GitHub account. Look into it. You might like it. And it gets you well under the half-pound registration requirements from the FAA. As always, do your own due diligence to make sure that what you're doing is legal, but don't want to get you in any trouble. And don't construe anything that I'm saying on this program as legal advice, even though I'm going to school. I'm trying to pass the bar. She had this thing called Trending Topics, and I always thought for the longest time she was saying Training Topics. So, Training Topics. Training Topics as far as, let me slide down. The kabuki theater that goes on. I try to stay away from politics on my channel, and with good reason. There are people out there that even their own political voice is forming or changing continuously, as mine has. As you grow, you experience more things. And so you come across things that will change the way that you'll see things, lessons in life that are going to make you think of things in a different light. And so, you know, I had a couple comments on one of my Ed Calderon videos about him not putting his last name out there, about other people having challenged Ed, about other people, large programs, not putting me on there. And, you know, it's ironic. It really is. You have all this experience and expertise in a certain area, and no one wants to speak to you. They won't put real Mexican journalists on their podcast, but they'll put Canadians. It makes no sense. And so you start questioning some of the things that you're being fed. Most recently, everything wrong with the Epstein files. Let me just touch on the comments on that YouTube video one more time. I was driving when I got your comments, sir. I saw them and I agree with you completely, 100%. I don't know why people couldn't see certain videos that I've had. I have unpublished a couple. It might have been that, because I didn't want to step on anyone's toes with an upcoming interview that's coming out. We filmed 3 episodes. I've got another episode out with a gentleman in North Carolina that I'm going to be doing here shortly, and another one in Brooklyn. So things are starting to develop, you know. I used to do telephone sales. I'm going to try to keep it brief because people like to stay on point with their attention spans. I used to do sales a lot, and you would go through a lot of leads, and you would fill up what a guy by the name of James O. is his last name. I don't want to name him. But he told me to keep filling up the funnel full of leads, and sooner or later money's going to start coming out of the bottom. And I'm not doing this for money, but that's with anything. You put a whole bunch of effort in on the top, and sooner or later you're going to get some results. And so that's what I'm doing. My channel again is not monetized. I opened up with Slide. They might slam my video because of his music, maybe not. Slide, rest your soul. So, without deviating too far from the kabuki theater that is our country at this point, obviously the two main things going on right now are ICE and the Epstein files. And the Epstein files, there's a lot to say about ICE, but I'm going to just leave it to this. As far as the masking your face, there was a guy that told me a long time ago that never involve yourself with somebody that you're afraid to be seen in public with eating lunch, right? And the guy's name was Rollo. But it was sound advice. You don't want to be poking around doing something that you would be afraid to have your parents or your grandmother see you doing. So don't do it. And along that same line of thought, that if you're going to be out doing something, breaking up families or however you see it, expelling foreigners from the country, there's some things that go along with that, you know. You shouldn't have to cover your face. If you're doing something that you have to cover your face for, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. What do you mean, Dave? You got a whole bunch of pictures of you in your uniform with your face uncovered. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch with my face uncovered too. There's different reasons I would cover my face. For example, when you're in the top of a patrol vehicle and you're being pelted with rain and you're doing 70 or 80 or 90 miles an hour, which you are in the rain sometimes, it comes down and it feels like you're being sandblasted in the face. So that's one reason you'd wear one. But I was never afraid to hide who I am. I'm not afraid to hide who I am now because I don't do things that cause me shame. I'm not a saint. I haven't lived a perfect life, but still, I'm not afraid of putting my face out there. Also, consequently, on my very first date with my wife, I told her what I was up to for a living. Yeah. To give her the opportunity to exclude herself from my life if that's what she wanted to do, because it's dangerous. My life has chilled out a lot since then and now, but it's still always going to have a present danger there. I've got some things, I don't know if I've uploaded them or not. Bringing a Cuban soldier on here. I'm also bringing on someone that I know was kidnapped by the cartel, was made to live with them, and we'll let her get into her story. She's from Nicaragua. And just different stories that might be interesting to you, because a lot of these pretender reporters and people that pretend to cover subjects, and I'm not really being aggressive or mean towards anybody, I'm just saying that they don't have the depth of knowledge that they think they do or that they pretend to have. If I don't know something, I'll tell you. But these people, given my proximity to Mexico and the Latino culture and Nicaraguans, Salvadoreños, Guatemaltecos, I know a lot of people and have come to know a lot of people throughout the years. And so in any event, I'm going to have some of them on here. I just had one of my brothers from my platoon on the other day. I ran out of Zoom time. My apologies to you. But I'm going to start bringing you some of this stuff that I've seen throughout the years. So that's a couple things. As far as the ice goes, covering your face up, you shouldn't be worried about the public knowing or doxing you, because you ought to be proud of what you're doing. I'm going to couple that with the fact that all of this law or legal morality that goes on, obey the law, a lot of people think that it doesn't have any moral basis, because how can you morally expel someone that's been born on a piece of land for centuries before you got there, march them across the country to their death, depriving them of their property and their liberty, as guaranteed by the Constitution that was already in effect, and then claim many years later that you have some type of inherent right to it and that people need to follow the law? That's fruit of a forbidden tree that you're not supposed to have. It was wrong in the beginning, and everything thereafter is wrong too. And I'm not confused about the way nature works and our animalistic instincts and the way that we behave as a species. I'm not confused about that. I'm just saying that we should call things by their proper names, because other people are going to. And when you play chess, and there was someone, Massey, he said that his wife is MIT educated in a tweet, and she's talking to people talk about checkers, not chess, and she's saying that the politicians are eating the red and black checkers, arguing about which one tastes better. This was just in a tweet that just came out. When you play chess, it's important to examine all the sides of everything so you can see where things can go potentially. That way you can best prepare for it. And when we talk about the moral correctness of the law, right? It's important to examine that, because other people are certainly going to point that out. And if you're at all worried, let me shut this. If you're at all worried about having a unified country, which is a necessity, a house divided against itself cannot stand. We've been here before. We've been here before more than once. We've been here before with the loyalists that wanted to remain with the English crown, and the patriots. We've been here before with the North and the South, and we're here again. And we've been here before in other areas, but it hasn't digressed into to a point to where people picked up arms. But we've been here at many points in time in this country, and we're here again. Should law enforcement be required to identify themselves and their families know who they're involving themselves with, and also be okay that they're involving themselves with it because they're choosing to date or marry a person that are effectively removing people from the streets? You should have to ID yourself. There's no way for someone to know. People are going to bring up that side of the argument. They're going to bring up the moral correctness of the law. Personally, again, I would point you to the many writings of Lysander Spooner, including his letters, not just the Constitution of No Authority, No Treason, but the letters that he's written people, because there's a lot in there that you can glean towards that. The other second amount of kabuki theater, these are questions we should be asking ourselves. The second thing of kabuki theater is the whole Trump mega Jeffrey Epstein, is he alive, is he dead file, 1 minute of footage released from one of the most powerful intelligence agencies in the world. And you got to wonder how it is that 1 minute of footage is missing from one of the most secure locations in the world. So secure that they held Joaquin Guzman there, Chapo Guzman. High profile prisoners go to Manhattan and are held there on a routine basis, but the FBI, premier intelligence agency in the United States, domestically speaking, is missing footage from it. And then the Bongino fallout with it. Pam Bondi. I'm going to tell you something about one of my assignments in Mexico as far as when I got my internship working for a law office there. My first legal document that I ever wrote, the person that I worked for took a red marker and just waylaid it, lambasted it with red marks everywhere, and she told me that every time you write a legal document, it's going to affect somebody's life or many people's lives and property permanently, so it has to be perfect. And so Pam Bondi, being the lawyer that she is clearly clued in on the fact of the importance of detail over everything that she says and does. So when she said that she had the Epstein file on her desk, she absolutely had the Epstein file on her desk, and she wasn't referring to, or the Epstein client list, she wasn't referring to some abstract file that was just sitting there. She clearly knew. And all of the footage that's gone on that she says that she has, and now all of a sudden she stated that it's something that Epstein himself downloaded. Who's on it? Who are these people? You don't have to release the video, but you do have to go after the people that are on it. And if there's one thing that I think Americans could be united on, so united on, in fact, that Apple themselves tried to use child. So I got to edit that out because I don't want the video getting slammed for the use of that term. The people that are in these videos, they need to be taken care of. Apple themselves tried to use this subject itself, child with the P word, to justify going through and doing a data search on everybody's electronic device, including that one. I'm not an Apple guy as far as phone goes. My wife is, including that one. And it's an invasion of privacy issue, which has been widely documented even by politicians. However, it's something that everybody of every flavor almost can get behind, that child porn P word is bad, and that we should go after the people with heavy hands that dive into it, right? But they won't do that. They won't go through and release the names of who are on the tapes. They won't go through and release the names of who's been to that island. And a lot of people are like, well, they won't do that because there's nothing there, because if there was something there, the Democrats would have crucified Trump with it, etc., etc., etc. Except there's people on both sides of those aisles that are involved in that. You got Spacey himself chiming in like, yeah, go ahead and release it, even though he's one of the people that are suspected of being on Kevin Spacey. There's a tweet. He tweeted it himself. You can go to his wall. You can look at it yourself, talking about, yeah, release it, knowing damn good and well that they're probably not going to release it because so many powerful people are involved in that, right? So, we're governed by a bunch of people that are involved in things clearly, because this would have come out. They did not send Ghislaine Maxwell to prison for nothing. So now they're saying that she can't state who's on that list either. Why the need to issue an order to keep her silent if there's not a list as they claim there is? That's kind of redundant, isn't it? Unnecessary. You don't need to issue a court order to silence someone when there's not a list, and it's specifically to keep her from revealing a list. So there is a list. Even if it's a list that the court has stated that she's not allowed to reveal, that's a list, right? There's a list in Pam Bondi's desk a few months ago, and now there's not. So there's two lists. The list on Bondi's desk, the list that Ghislaine Maxwell isn't allowed to release, and then Trump's like, stop talking about it. Wherever you're at politically, wherever you're at, should a politician be telling you what you're allowed to think about? Some of them want to. They want to put chips in your head. This is not science fiction. It's happening. So there's that, right? Now we're going to get into the children that are on Epstein's island. In many states, you know what? I probably shouldn't close that, but I'll edit this out. How many states allow minors to marry in the United States? Child marriage in the United States. Currently, 37 states allow minors to marry in some capacity, according to data available as of June 2024. So only 13 states explicitly prohibit child marriage. Why is this important, Dave? I'm going to tell you why this is important, okay? Even prisoners, even criminals have this down right, that if someone messes with or harms children, it's their bacon in the fryer, right? Not going to have an easy time. Probably won't even survive. If it wasn't for protective custody, they definitely wouldn't survive. So even criminals, people that have historically made or in some way made mistakes or in some way found themselves behind bars, get this one right. But 37 states allow children to marry in some capacity, okay? And if we dig into it more, which we can, oh, here we go. We got a good one. Minimum marriage age nationally. So, Oregon, 17 years old. Montana, 16 years old. Utah, 15 years old. Arizona, 16 years old. Alaska, 14 years old. Okay? Hawaii, 15 years old. Texas, 16, emancipated minors only. Kansas, 15, Nebraska, 17, South Dakota, 16, North Dakota, 16, Minnesota, 16, Iowa, 16, Wisconsin and Illinois, 16, Indiana, 15, Kentucky and Tennessee, both 17, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina, all 16, Florida, 17, North Carolina, 14, Virginia, 16, but they have to be emancipated minors, Washington, D.C., 16, and the nation's capital, 16 years old, where these guys are at, right? Maryland, 15. Delaware, well, we're going to leave that out. That's all 18. But Connecticut is 16. New York is 17. Vermont, 16. New Hampshire, 13 years old if you're a female, 14 years old if you're a male. That is according to the source, Tahira Justice Center and Frontline PBS, Deseret News Graphic. So from the Mormon Church, but the source is TAHIRIH Justice Center and Frontline PBS. Go. There it is. Okay? Why is it important, the national marriage age? I'm going to tell you why. Because when we talk about minors on TV, right? Talking to you guys. Talking to this guy right here. When we talk about minors on TV, and we say the Epstein child list and they're down there on the Epstein's Island doing whatever it is they are with children, we have to bear in mind that the politicians that may or may not be involved with this, the celebrities that may or may not be involved with this, do have kind of an out, right? If you can legally marry in 37 states, it's not a far stretch. You remember the Anthony Weiner thing where he was sexting some teen? He's not in prison forever. And his girlfriend, Paula, whatever, Amud or whatever her name is still being working for Hillary Clinton. It wasn't such a lambasting, hard-hitting scandal that where he was locked away forever. She was a teenager, whatever. Should he be doing it? Absolutely not. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But let's not pretend that there's not a huge difference between 16, 17, even in some cases 13 in New Hampshire, you can legally marry per politicians that are in office right now, allowing that to go on with children. But these same politicians that will allow people 13 and up to get married still will not release this list, and Republicans just voted against it. The protector of God and righteousness voted against the so-called protectors of God and righteousness. And don't worry, I've got plenty for the Democrats too with their COVID and mask and all this. Two wings of one bird. The Republicans voted against releasing this list. And I am positing to you that there's a difference between someone going to an island with a lot of money and they meet some 17-year-old that's dressed up and she looks like she's 21 and maybe she's got fake ID, maybe she doesn't. But one of these politicians that has been there could say, or one of these celebrities that has been there could say, hey, I was with this girl. She was 17 years old. She looked like she was 19 or 20. Too young, maybe, yeah. There's an argument that could be had there. But I was not aware of it, and this is what was going on, and try to save their bacon with the Department of Justice and turn state's evidence. You see it all the time. I just watched Black Mass movie the other night with Whitey Bulger and all the people coming out against him, making a plea deal. None of that's going on here. Why not? They could get away with not being really just raked over the coals socially by saying that it was someone that was 16 or 17 years old and they looked like a young adult or even 21, because with makeup you can do that. 0 people are coming out on this. So then we get into, well, when we're talking minors, is it 13 and under? I mean, what's going on these tapes? None of that's coming out. These are all questions that we should be asking ourselves. I don't care if you're white, black, Latino, Oriental, whatever, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, Anarchist, whatever. These are all questions that we should be asking ourselves about what's going on that island and what's going on in Washington, D.C. and with the Department of Justice, to where we're not asking these questions. We can round up Jose and Chepe selling oranges on a corner because that's a huge deal, but we can't get to the bottom of whether they're diddling people that are 16 or 17 years old that look like adults, or whether it's like full-on child molestation. And don't get me wrong, they both are. 18's 18. However, there's a big stretch between prepubescent and someone that's at the end of their adolescence. We all know it. So it's not the same thing. And even legal statutes on the books throughout the country will reflect that. Huge difference. But none of this information is being released. Which puts us at a point to where we know we're being sold kabuki theater every day. I'm not using the word kabuki to be cool. That's really what it is. Something that's being presented as something to the public. And we're not being told the truth by the people that are supposedly in charge of not just enforcing the laws, but making the laws. You know, I'm not some stalwart moral person. I mean, I am very faithful to my wife. I get up and go to work. I'm going to be going to work here in a little bit. But these are questions that we should be asking ourselves. Again, just to recap, because I'm going to edit this down. If you're going to do something, you have to hide your face to do it. You probably shouldn't be doing it. And if you're the family members of a person that's doing that, you shouldn't be attached to that person either if you're afraid of hiding what you're doing. They talk about it in the Bible. You don't light a bushel and you don't light a light on a hillside and then hide it under a bushel. If you're going to do something, stand up and make your actions known. Be a man. Also, likewise, if you have all this information out there, Bondi and other people, or other people that have been to that island with lots of money for lawyers because they're rich, and you were with a 17-year-old that looked like a 21-year-old, you have the legal resources, you have the resources financially to get yourself out of that and lay this whole thing open, but they won't. And Bongino or whatever, Cash Patel, whatever, they're just as implicit because they're sitting here trying to cover it up. And then they're going to have the audacity to give you a doctored video that's missing a minute of footage. I don't ever want to tell my audience what to think. I'm just going to tell you what I'm thinking. I'm going to tell you what I've seen and heard, what I've done personally at a professional level in Mexico. I'm not going to tell you what. These are just things that we ought to be thinking about, yeah?